Tom. My name is Kathy Davidson Lambre. I'm from New York City, and I come from a military family. So this is why I'm a member of this caucus. And we're really delighted to have you here today. So could you give us a little intro about yourself?
Sure. I'm Tom Palzewicz. I'm running in Wisconsin's 5th Congressional District. If you don't know where that is, it's in between Milwaukee and Madison. So it's all the deeply red area between the two very liberal cities of Milwaukee and Madison. And
Yeah.
it's a great place to live. I was in the Navy for 6 years. I was on a submarine for 4 years. And when
Wow.
I got out of the Navy, I came back to live here because Wisconsin's just a great place to live.
Okay. I have some friends from Wisconsin, and I have actually friends here in France who are from Wisconsin.
Ah,
So yeah, they're everywhere.
they're
Okay,
everywhere. Yep. Us
they're everywhere.
Wisconsinites. Yep.
I saw that I'm going to start with one of my own little things. I saw that you have you talk about a new way forward. How is a new way forward different from a Green New Deal?
I guess the biggest difference is being in the military, and this is, I go back to this idea, and I use this in business all the time, is you have a goal, you know where you want to get to, but you know that probably your plan that you've created is not going to get you there because you have things come up and you have to, re-examine and reassess and replan. And I just think that the Green New Deal is a great start, but I think that there's some key elements that we really need to figure out, which is business disruption, because I think that's going to be one of the keys, because we're going to disrupt a lot of different businesses. And what that means is disrupting people. We got to make sure that as we disrupt companies, that we also understand we're disrupting workers, and there needs to be some recognized
And learning new
yeah,
skills.
yeah, exactly. So we need to recognize that. We need to recognize that people are going to be probably out of the job that they're in. They need to get retrained to get back into something else. So the way I'm looking at this is we really need to work on our energy grid. And then we need to end fossil fuel subsidies. We need to work on our energy grid, which I'm really excited about. I was an electrician in the Navy, so I always go, a place where we have green jobs is really the key. And our energy grid
How
is much more equitable and a lot cheaper than it is now, and
how
a
would you
lot greener.
define green jobs?
I would say in solar, and I think in redoing our electrical grid, I think there's going to have to be a lot of work. I've been reading articles. There's a couple articles lately. One is on cold fusion, and the other is on
Mhm.
room temperature superconducting. I think those are two technological breakthroughs that we're going to see in the next 10 years, is my guess. And then that's going to allow us to completely retrofit our entire energy grid, and we're going to need a lot of people to do that. Because infrastructure is so incredibly important, not here in the United States, but around the world. And being able to build out a green infrastructure is going to be critical, but it's going to create some amazingly good jobs.
Now, I was looking at in district. There's a 93.3% graduates from high school, but only 33.3% from college. I was wondering why and what could be done to improve access to university education. And with saying that, to springboard on what you just said, do you feel that people changing behavior is the resistance is more from big comfort zones or from fear of change?
Well, I'd like to deal with that one both first, because it's both. All right. So it's people tend to stay in their comfort zones until they're forced out.
Mm.
And then change has to happen. And then people, when change does happen, there's an automatic fear level about how's this going to impact me and my family and what's going on with me. And we're seeing that in the pandemic now. It's like, nobody asked for the pandemic, yet it's on us and it's requiring us to
And it
change.
exists.
Right, it exists.
Yeah.
It's requiring us to change. And there's still a level of fear. And there's people who just want to say, I'm not afraid and I want to stay in my comfort zone. And we're seeing that with mask wearing, especially in Wisconsin right now, where we're undergoing, I think we're the third highest state in the country for just number of cases, and we're only behind Texas and California, and we're a much smaller state than them. And I'm sorry, what was the other question? You started
Well,
with?
they kind of interact in a certain way. I read that in your district, there's 93% of people who
Oh,
graduate from high school, but only 33.3% who actually finish college. Why is that?
Well, one is we have a big trades pipeline here. So a lot of young people go into the trades, which, you know, when you think about education level, because college is one metric, but there's a whole bunch of different ways to measure education. The trades are popular here. Manufacturing, there's a lot of manufacturing jobs in my district. So there are ways to become employed without going to college, but the key is that you don't stop your education. When I think about the military and talk about the military, is how do you translate all the wonderful skills that you learn in the military back into that civilian grid? And it's a real challenge because sometimes the terminology is so different and what you're doing is so different. But most people who have been in the military, when they get out, they have some really incredible organizational skills, some leadership skills, right? There's all these skills, but how do you put it on a resume and how do you explain it to somebody who's never been in the military?
And also, how do you find these opportunities?
Yeah, it's a real challenge.
It's a challenge.
Yep.
The most important issues, according to your website, is gun violence. We're glad that you're taking a holistic approach to the problem, from domestic violence to accidental gun deaths to school shootings to the lack of CDC research on the public health aspect of gun violence. What is the first thing you are going to focus on if you were elected?
There's a couple of things, actually. One is universal background checks. I think that needs to be implemented for all gun sales in the United States. You know, I grew up in Wisconsin where 750,000 people go into the north woods of Wisconsin every fall to hunt deer. And so we're a hunting culture. You know, I'm a gun owner. I've hunted. I was an NRA member when I was younger. I have a marksmanship award from the NRA when I was younger. And that NRA doesn't exist today because they were all about hunter safety and just proper handling of weapons. And so we're in this different environment. I believe in gun ownership, but one of the things I talk about is I don't believe that gun ownership should be inexpensive. I'm also a big believer that if you have a gun, you should have insurance. And the great thing is like 80% of people in the United States agree with these things.
Yes.
The challenge is overcoming the roadblocks. We've got one in Mitch McConnell in the Senate. He just refuses to even hold a vote. And my opponent is our state Senate Majority Leader. He refuses to hold any votes on gun violence prevention, any red flag laws, and anything.
You're talking about Sensenbrenner?
No, Scott Fitzgerald. So
Scott
Congressman
Fitzgerald.
Sensenbrenner has retired, so he's not running anymore. And I'm running against Scott Fitzgerald, who, just like Mitch McConnell has said, we're not even going to have a vote on this.
Yeah,
and that to me is not democracy.
Okay, I don't find him extremely impressive. Do you have any plans for advocating for disabled
Oh,
people?
absolutely. I mean, there's this group here in Southeast Wisconsin called the Ability Center, and they've been really pushing the envelope when it comes to, because it's not about disability as much as it's about different abilities, and how do you make sure people of differing abilities have a chance to be able to actively engage in all the things that everyone else can engage in. And the bottom line there is yes. I mean, one of the reasons I'm a Democrat, and people ask me this, like, Tom, why are you running in this red district? You know, if you wanted to get elected, you should run as a Republican. I'm like, well, I can't, because I believe in equality and justice. I believe in equality in all things, and I believe in equality and justice. And we just don't have those things. And if people like me don't fight for those things, it's going to be hard to create that, especially in America today, where, people don't understand, like, racism is so embedded in where we are from a systemic standpoint that when you protest racism, people think you're protesting America. It's unbelievable. I went to a protest in a smaller town in Washington County, which is a very red area in our state, and there was a group of about 30 people. It was mostly women of color. It was children, and then these 8 to 10 guys packing weapons show up to try to intimidate the crowd, and the police were there, and they didn't say anything to the people open carrying because it's legal. But then at the end, these guys started actually threatening some of the protesters, and they had found out where they lived and told them they were going to show up at their house. And we called the same police, and the police said, well, there's nothing we can do because it's outside of our jurisdiction. And that is the country that we live in right now in America, is it's so interwoven into what we do. And there's fear. I mean, these guys that were packing the weapons, you could tell that they were afraid of where their place in society was going to end up, because they've been disenfranchised from a job standpoint. You know, there's really nobody trying to help them navigate through this huge change in our society from where we were and where we're going.
But do these people actually really want to be helped, or do they just want to stay in their position?
Well, I'm just going to go back to what we were talking about before. When it comes to behaviors, fear is an incredible driving motivation. And I try not to judge people on their behaviors when they're driven by fear, and when those fears are fanned in the flame, because it's exactly what our president is doing right now. He's fanning the flames of those fears and creating this environment where people think somebody's coming to my house tomorrow, because there are protests right now. And it is, you know, so it's that whole rhetoric idea that needs to get toned down. But it's also about, we're changing. We're rapidly changing as a country. And, right, you know, people hear that we're the melting pot, and it's difficult to do. And it, you know, and that's where, but we need a lot more racial sensitivity training, done it at much earlier years in our children's lives. And we need to break down systemic racism. It's one of the things I want to work on when I get to Washington, is we need to start budgeting through the lens of racial equity. We need to really look at the way we budget at the federal level and say, all right, are we producing as equitable an environment through our federal system? Because they're doing it right now in Milwaukee County. Milwaukee County passed an ordinance that said that racism is a public health crisis. And so Milwaukee County is now moving toward ending systemic racism by looking at each and everything that they do and figuring out where it's embedded and working to remove it.
That's very interesting.
It's powerful. And it, you know, so, because we can't, I personally don't believe I can change somebody who's racist, but I can definitely work on the system of racism.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to get to one last question. Many of our members live in countries with compulsory military or civic service. What is your stance on mandatory service?
Yeah, you know, I chuckle when I get this question, because it takes me right back to my senior year in high school, because I actually wrote a paper on this, and I recommended that everybody who graduates from high school in the United States should go and do a 2-year stint doing something. Because I know that's what led me to join the military, but I truly believe that when you're forced to live outside of where you grew up, when you're forced to interact with people you normally wouldn't interact with, when you see a bigger picture, your level of empathy for what other people are going through and doing goes up dramatically. Even though I'm a white man, you know, I've got an African-American campaign manager. She's great. You know, we have a bunch of interns, and we try to, the whole spectrum of different viewpoints, because I think all those viewpoints allow us to be able to talk and come up with a better viewpoint of what we want to accomplish.
One last word, and then we have to end the interview.
Well, I just want to say that, you know, I'm so fortunate to be endorsed by your organization, and I really appreciate people who want to get outside their comfort zones and learn and grow. And I think that everybody who's abroad right now, if you can remember that there are great things about the United States, it doesn't make us great in everything, but what are the things that you can bring back to help us in this huge experiment we call democracy? Because I think that's really key. So, and I just want to thank you, Kathy and Aaron, for inviting me on.
And if ever you come to Paris, you're welcome for coffee or dinner. We'd have a great conversation.
We would, yes.
So thank you so much.